Good morning, everyone. It is Blood God Saturday. I am Eric Van Allen, one of your co-hosts here for Axe of the Blood God, an independent RPG podcast, joined by my other co-host, Nadia Oxford. Nadia, how you doing this morning?
I'm good, but I don't know where the hell Cat is. She's, I think by this point she's been carried away by a dolphin.
Yeah, Kat just wanted to go on adventures. Kat
Like
wants
Orpheus.
to explore.
Was it Orpheus who was carried away by a dolphin, or was it some other Greek
Orpheus,
bard?
Odysseus,
Orpheus. Maybe
Homer?
it's
I don't
Odysseus.
know.
Chat, let us know which bard was carried away by the dolphins, please.
The dolphins. Stay away from them. They're dangerous. Cat, don't hang out with the dolphins. Who is hanging out with us today is the one and only Timothy Monbleau. How you doing, Tim?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good. Really happy to be here. I think me coming on the show has kind of been a long time coming. I think we first floated this, I think, over a year ago at this point. So actually having the time, everything aligned, come back on. Excited to talk about some real nerdy class stuff. Yeah, good time. Glad to be here.
Tim, freelancer extraordinaire. Why don't you tell the people at home a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So Eric and I were formerly partners in crime over at a little site called Destructoid.com. Some refer to us as Tim and Eric. You don't have to, but you could. And since then...
When did that happen? Wait, what?
I remember it came up. And the funny thing is, the only reason I specifically remember it was because I remember you specifically saying that you've been trying very hard to not make that a thing. Okay. So that's the only reason why it stuck with me. Is actually you saying don't call us Tim and Eric. But since then, I've I'm a freelancer extraordinaire. Can find my words at Kotaku. I've been on PC Gamer, and always open to broaden my horizons. So if you're out there and you like the extraordinary thoughts and feelings coming out of this mouth and want those on words on your website, just give me a shout.
Hire Tim. That's our motto today. Hire Tim.
Yeah, hire Tim. That's our topic.
Today we are talking... Oh, sorry, Nadia. What you were saying?
That's how you're going to love it.
Yeah. Today we are talking about Black Mages. We're doing another class-conscious episode of Axe of the Blood God. We'll talk about Final Fantasy Black Mages, of course, as well as, I don't know, whatever else qualifies as a Black Mage. There'll be a whole topic of discussion. But first, some housekeeping. Of course, we have the monthly game club going on right now. Vagrant Story is our winner. So be playing that, be checking that out. Hang out in the game club on the Discord if you want to participate. Our Pantheon is out, Cyberpunk 2077. That was a fun one, really good one. And we're also in the middle of our current side quest, Free Ren Beyond Journey's End. We are watching that for anime. So keep an eye out at the start of May for a big special episode for Free Ren, talking all about it. There's new merch exclusive to the stars with a 20% discount. Ooh, I think it's actually for everybody. There's just a star exclusive discount, but there is new merch for everybody, including all of our stuff for the 10th anniversary. The newsletter is here. Subscribe to our different versions. We have a free version and a paid version, and we're streaming, as you can see right now. If you're on twitch.tv/bloodgodpod, we're also on YouTube. Go look for us, Axe of the Blood God, on YouTube. We're everywhere. We're in your walls. We're unstoppable. We're doing
Better call me
everything.
Exterminator. No, don't bother. Don't bother calling Exterminator. It won't help.
You can't get us out. But today we are talking about Black Mages. Previous episodes of Class Conscious that we have done have gone into various different RPG archetypes, I would call them, classes, jobs, whatever you want to say. Healers and white mages has been one of our past topics of discussion, as well as thieves, dragoons, summoners. Apparently bards. I forgot we did bards. That wasn't on my list that we did bards, but we did do bards.
Justice for bards.
And now we are talking everyone's favorite magic powerhouses, the Black Mage. So to start, Tim, you're our guest. You're our expert. How would you define a Black Mage?
So I have a feeling that this might be a heated topic of discussion. But for
we don't
me,
do that here.
Yes. Oh, absolutely not. Everything needs to be fully agreed upon by everyone, or else the motion doesn't pass. So for me, I feel like I ground my expectation of the Black Mage in the classic Final Fantasy One Black Mage. So for me, a Black Mage has to be a class that is primarily a magic damage dealer, and it's can have secondary utility. For example, it could have some attack buff, it could have some debilitating magic, it can have a little bit of utility. It doesn't necessarily just do the damage, but that is its primary function. It's when you look at that character, you say, that is a Black Mage. But I would also say, to get a little bit more into the nitty gritty, that when I think about a Black Mage, I think about a class that I define as both powerful and fragile in equal measure. So that is to say, exactly. So that is to say that, for example, we just brought up a bard. So your Final Fantasy XIV bard, for example, they're a ranged attacker. They can move around. They have a lot of freedom in how they do their damage. Whereas a Black Mage, either whether it's they're frail physically and they have low defense, or what I think is more interesting, that there is some sort of limit on how they can attack, that there is something that makes you as the player really think critically about, is this the right time to use this spell? Should I use a weaker spell in this instance? I think that makes a great Black Mage. But yeah, and I'm willing to open up to whatever you guys think about Black Mages as well.
Willing to be open-minded about Black Mages.
Yeah, exactly. I'm willing to have my own horizons broadened on this subject.
Nadia, what about yourself? What do you think of Black Mage as? Is that kind of like lining up with what you would say?
It's hard to say with me because Black Mage has never been one of my favorite classes. Like, it's not one I play very frequently, but I will say that my first impression of a Black Mage, as I know them today, would probably have been from Final Fantasy I. And of course, when I looked at that pointy hatted, like, glowy eye thing, I said, why is Arco from He-Man in this game? Because the resemblance is extremely there. And whether or not the inspiration was on purpose or not, I can't say, but I kind of associate them with frustration because I was very bad at Final Fantasy. I didn't really know how to play it. And I did know how to play Dragon Quest, which has a whole different kind of spell repertoire. And with Final Fantasy I, the thing that frustrated me was whereas Dragon Quest used MP, Final Fantasy uses charges, which some people adore that system where the Black Mage is limited to charges 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on different levels. There you go, Tim is a sicko for that.
I'm ready for this.
I appreciate it, but it's not really my favorite style of playing. So when I think of Black Mage, I do still kind of think of that pure damage dealing, but I am definitely willing to expand my horizontals, as the Luna said, because the other Black Mage I met, quote unquote, that really stick to my mind was probably Rydia from Final Fantasy IV, and she has a very interesting journey as a magic user. You find her as a kid, and she can use like weak white magic, weak black magic, and weak summon magic. She can summon like Chocobo. And then when you find her as an adult, she has given up her white magic to focus on black magic and also to summon stronger monsters. So I really find it interesting she made that trade-off. And there's a similar instance with Nina from Breath of Fire, who sometimes in some versions of the game, you play her as a kid. And when she starts off, she has white magic and black magic. And as she gets older, she might have some white magic left, but usually she's like much more focused on black magic. So I definitely still think black magic, except in the case of red mages who are just cuckoo in the coconut. I love them.
I do feel like that's part of the ingrained power fantasy of the Black Mage is like, yes, it has to be glass cannon, magic artillery, burst damage, I would say is a big part of it, and elemental weakness targeting, but also like what you hit on there, Nadia, the idea that you have this school of magic, this baseline that you have leveled up over time. It's the I always go back to wizard versus sorcerer and like intelligence
Yeah,
versus wisdom or intelligence versus charisma, that
I've
sort of
had to
thing.
learn that.
Yeah, yeah. The idea of like someone who is naturally good at magic versus someone who has learned to be good at magic, has studied to be good at magic. And I feel like
Right.
black mages and wizards end up being pretty parallel in that way. And then I end up associating like sorcerer from D&D with some of the more like stranger, what you would call like Final Fantasy job classes, like a red mage or something like that.
Right.
But
Yeah.
I do think when I sat down and was like, what is a black mage? It was that idea of someone in the back line blasting out spells, big damage, sometimes maybe like limited by the amount of damage they could do, or there's a drawback to their power, which I think is always like a really compelling idea, even if it doesn't play out in the gameplay, but you have like a character who in some way has like sacrificed something for great power. That is a very common trend that we'll see as we talk about some black mages that we remember throughout history. But I do want to ask, like, what is the hallmark of a good black mage? Like, what is the defining criteria for, ooh, that's a good one? Nadia, do you have any?
I do actually. I am only just starting to really kind of learn the Baldur's Gate system, so I'm not thinking in terms of that. When I think about Black Mage in terms of Final Fantasy, I think, okay, a Red Mage is a jack of all trades. They can get this far, but the Black Mage can go a step further and really wield what I would call kind of the end game spells, like the really damaging spells. Like you're gonna get flare class spells from a Black Mage, unless you do Mega Flare from a Summoner. That's a little bit different. Um, yeah, you just get those really hardcore damage dealing spells, and your mage only seems to get weaker a lot of the time as they get stronger. An interesting mage maybe we should talk about is Tella, but he's a whole other bucket of bolts, I suppose. Yeah, so I really associate black mages with that world-ending power, but you have to know how to use a black mage to really get the most out of them. If you're sending your black mage to the front lines, they're getting squashed, and you're not managing them properly, you're not gonna like using them very much. But if you can use them properly and make sure they're outfitted and kind of boosted in the way that they should be, you can get some. You might have your game ender right there, basically.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It's interesting to me because the classic Final Fantasy I Black Mage sprite, which for me is just the default of what I think when I hear Black Mage.
Yeah.
I think that in terms of what you can convey with the limited NES palette, it's incredible to me that you look at the Black Mage and you see the visage of power and mystery.
Yeah.
But it's also precious. It's also adorable. And I feel like that's actually important, especially in Final Fantasy, but you can extend that out to other Black Mages as well. That there's something about a Black Mage that you need to protect. You need to utilize the power of the Black Mage in a way that is responsible. A Black Mage could theoretically die by casting Meteor. It's something that, that you need
meltdown.
to
Oh shit.
Yeah. You need to be aware of that. And I think that especially in Final Fantasy, that's something that's always been consistent for me. I don't want to jump the gun here, but it's something that even when I look at a character like Lulu, for example, very much a Black Mage, but also carries around a little Moogle doll. That's adorable.
Yeah.
That's precious. And I think that it's that balance of overwhelming power, but a sort of fragility to it. That there's something that you as the player feel inclined to safeguard. I think that's important to me to make a good Black Mage.
There is something actually that I thought of when you brought that up, Tim, is one thing I always like that's consistent about Final Fantasy games, especially the older Final Fantasy games, is that Black Mages, when you are able to talk to them, maybe excluding Vivi, they tend to be kind of assholes. And you see this a lot in Final Fantasy IV. When you start the game, Cecil, the main character, he's done a genocide. And when he kind of has to go on his road to perdition, he ends up back at the town where he massacred a bunch of mages. And the white mages, the quote unquote, healing magic, good people, they're like, oh, child, I forgive you, and yet you scare me, and I cannot, your soul is stained black. And the black mages are like, hey, screw you, I'm going to cast pig on you. And they do, and they cast toad on you. And then there's an old lady who's like, watch my dance. And she puts you to sleep, and she poisons you, and she turns into a pig, and she runs away. The black mages are just very vengeful little pricks, as they should be. But they even when they're not talking to Cecil in that environment, like when you go down into the mage classrooms in the basement, and, the white mages are being all good and proper. You see a black mage who tries to cast a spell on you, and it's a status effect like pig or toad, and you're like, oh, it didn't work. So they're just like throwing magic at you. They don't care. So they have that personality of, yeah, I am aggressive, as is my magic.
Well, even and I think that fits with the class fantasy of a class that looks at a character that raided the village and is immediately in a mode of preservation.
Yeah.
Because that was even true even in the first Final Fantasy, that there is the pecking order, that the character that's the first in your party is the one that takes damage, and the further down you go, the less likely that character is to take damage. So just very baked into the series is this idea of, even before tank mechanics really became a thing that you would refer to as tank mechanics, that there was this idea that the Black Mage, it can't be in the middle of danger. And so that just checks out, that's just baked into the character, that's baked into the story. Yeah, exactly.
I was gonna say, is it necessary that a black mage has to essentially wear robes and wear like rags and not walk around in big like clonking armor like a paladin or a warrior would? I feel like
as someone who's like a major like Raceland fan, because that was my first like wizard that I really knew. Yes, always. 100%.
Crucial. I was watching like Solo Leveling, I think, where they have kind of some pastiches of like RPG parties and RPG concepts of, here's a tank, here's a healer, here's DPS and things like that. And everyone who uses magic in that show, mostly for the most part, is kind of like wearing lighter clothes, is wearing, like has freedom of movement, is not bulked up and armored up. And I was thinking to myself, I was like, why would they do that? Like theoretically, conceptually, if you are a weaker person, you might want to wear more armor to protect yourself so you can cast your spell. But I do feel like for some reason the black mage needs to be in robes, in some sort of like lack of heavy protective armor, and it's not for like freedom of movement the way you would for a rogue or a thief, right? So I've always kind of wondered why that was the case. Is it just like we have an image of a wizard, of a wizened like robe wearing person in the party, and that's why it has to be that way?
That's my lookout. I don't know. You bring up a good point, but I just always think wizard wearing robes, because in the Dragonlance canon, again, Raceland was extremely, his constitution was shattered because he had gone through a test at some magical tower, that blah 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 power, and it left him so weak that he could barely stand up, let alone like wear armor. So I always figured, well, maybe a lot of mages kind of have that going on, where they sacrifice some physical ability of some kind in exchange for casting this powerful magic. So maybe they just don't have the energy to schlep around big armor. I wouldn't.
I think it's important to the class fantasy that you wear the big robes, because to me, I know that if I see a character in big dark robes, that just immediately tells me that is a black mage. That guy is all about casting magic. I don't need to talk to that person. I know that's what they do, and I think that there's something there's something that's very elegant about that design. But also, to me, I definitely associate black mages within the context of a party. Again, kind of going back to the idea of tanks and healers and kind of those party roles, because I'm sure that that plenty of people have, their Elden Ring build is like a heavy armor magic caster. And that makes sense in that context, right? It's when it's you versus the world, that just makes more sense than, something that's heavier or that's lighter, unless you're really agile, which again doesn't really fit into what I think of as a black mage. But it does, that makes sense for an army of one. But a Black Mage, I don't think exists to be an army of one. It exists to be this precious, fragile resource, and not a resource that's there to protect the party through curing, but to protect the party through absolutely nuking entire hordes before they can do damage. And that's what I think makes Black Mages interesting. Were a Black Mage a character that could just be totally self-sufficient, I don't think that it would be as endearing of a concept. But it's that balance that I think makes a good Black Mage and makes a Black Mage stand out in a party.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Criminal Justice brings up a good point in the chat. There is zero value for a Black Mage to wear armor because they must concentrate to cast larger spells, and if they get hit, it interrupts the spell anyway.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we also asked the community for some takes and some hot discussion topics to throw in during this. And our friend of the show, Len, sent in a message saying, strict definition of Black Mages, only characters who are specifically identified as Black Mage in their respective game count. But if you want to do a more permissive definition, human artillery piece, all offense, no defense. Your one job is to make things go boom. You don't heal, you don't cast shield, you don't stun or do crowd control or any of that nonsense. Your magic is purely destructive, generally elemental for that reason. It's also probably not particularly precise. Your friends need to be careful where they stand in battle. I think that last part is also really interesting. The idea of, I think of Final Fantasy Tactics, where you put down the cross magic, and it's like, don't stand in those squares because it's going to do something.
Like, I can't babysit you, but letting you know.
God forbid you lock a huge area spell on an enemy and it walks right into your party. Yeah.
It's kind of a bummer that it feels like we've gotten away from that sometimes, because I play an old Final Fantasy and I see the way that like magic can bounce back on you or cause problems, or like tactics where you can literally just mess yourself up by putting the cross in the wrong place or walking a character in and forgetting that you have a spell going down there. Like, I think that is a compelling part of the fantasy, that the magic is so powerful and destructive, it can fire back on you.
Yeah, it's very much a part of Final Fantasy VI, which I find interesting. Eric, you have been talking about wanting to maybe take on the dragons before you finish the game, but maybe that not being a great idea, because the magicite you get for that journey basically gives you, I think the spell is Meltdown, which does what it says on the tin. Everyone stands in that blast radius, they're going down. And it's a really beautifully animated spell. It absolutely whips, but you cast it once to see it, and then you're just like, okay, well, everyone's dead. That was fun. So there you go. You have the ultimate spell. If you can find a way to protect yourself against it before you cast it, good for you. But if you're like me and you're just like, let's see this thing like make pretty light. So, oh, well, that was fun. Everyone's dead. Well, not really much good to you.
I think that feeling of caution, again, I so hung up on the Final Fantasy I Black Mage that I'm just going to go back there every time. But it's actually a reason why I really like the original tiered magic system so much, because even in this state of those super rudimentary mechanics, the idea that a Black Mage has this really incredible power, but you really have to think about how you're going to use those powerful spells. Maybe you just got a new tier of magic and that's your most powerful thing, but you only have maybe 1 or 2 casts of that, but you have 8 casts of your level 1 magic. And it really makes you sit and think, is this a good time for me to use one of those really precious resources before I get out of this dungeon and head back to an inn? Or is this a less dire situation where I can use one of my weaker spells? I find that methodical play really imbues a certain fantasy of playing a Black Mage, whereas a fighter, they attack, their one button is attack. You don't have to think about it. They do that and they're great at it. Whereas a Black Mage, meanwhile, is always thinking about what's their move. Can they sacrifice just doing like a whack of their staff? Do they use a weaker spell? Is this the opportunity? Are things really dire and I gotta whip out the one major attack spell that's gonna wipe out this enemy party? I think those kinds of decisions, even in a game that's as rudimentary as the first Final Fantasy, those types of decisions really make the Black Mage experience immersive to me. And it also kind of ties into just what makes RPGs great in general, that kind of decision making in combat, the idea that you're not just there to hit the attack button and use cure when you take damage, kind of that broader thinking about, what's the next 3 battles look like, what's the next 5 turns look like. Those are the types of decisions that really keep me coming back to RPGs, and I think that the Black Mage is best when it plays into that.
Do we think
right.
Do we think the Black Mage is a necessary part of an RPG then? Do you think that like when you have an RPG party, you need that archetype in that party for sure? Is this like a thing that we need in every RPG?
I always prioritize white mages over black mages. And I will sometimes just choose a summoner over a black mage just because I like the flashy animals and stuff that they summon. I'm not a huge black mage user. I'm not the kind of person. I like what Tim is describing. Everything about it stresses me out. So it's just not something that I want to do. I don't want to manage these charges. Even as a kid, I was like, ah. So I would rather just have the freedom of having, big beefy dude, big beefy spell, big beefy like damage. But also I will compromise and have a red mage if I can, which I know means I usually don't have access to the really explodey stuff. Although if you play red mage in FF14, you're generally a hero because you do have those revival spells that when your white mages wipe, and oh shit, here comes the red mage to revive the white mage. Like they're the hero because they have that spell.
So even though I just said all of that about how great black mages are and all that stuff, I also think that, a black mage is generally not a necessary part of an RPG party, which I actually like that, because a well-designed black mage does present this choice to you as the player. Because like I said, that sort of mental load of playing a black mage, do you want to deal with that? And it's valid to just not want to deal with that. But if you do deal with that, then a good black mage has to be able to justify its place in the party, despite the fact that it brings in that mental load of playing it, despite the fact that it's fragile, it might not have the utility of a frontline damage dealer, or it might not have that ease of use. And I really like that trade-off. The idea that you're making the choice to bring this little precious, powerful force into your party, because there are other schools of thought that a black mage might just be there to hit elemental damage, and that's more of the
child into
exactly. I'm always thinking about that tiny little Final Fantasy 1 black mage. It's so cute. I love it so much. There's a reason why that's just such an iconic Final Fantasy
My weakness
design.
is when someone takes like a hat and a scarf and they put it on their black cat, and it's a Vivi. Yeah, it's really cute.
Yeah, get a good black cat with a wizard hat. Yep, there we go. But that's I think making that choice to bring a black mage into the party, and again, I would say Final Fantasy X had more of that school of thought of, the black mage is more the elemental damage dealer because you're using kind of everyone at the same time, and I think that's a valid approach too. But traditionally speaking, I like the fact that you have to choose to use a black mage.
Yeah, I think 10 ended up shaping a lot of the ways that I think about the black mage as an archetype, because obviously it was an early like RPG for me that really stuck and really, like, I don't know, clicked with me, built a lot of archetypal ideas of what I think of the RPG party. They came out of that. But like Lulu specifically in that game, we'll talk about black mages by name, by memory in a moment. But Lulu in that game, you're right, was kind of, the whole system was built around hitting weaknesses, at least early on. So Waka hit the flyer, Titus hit the wolf, Orin hit the armor, and so Lulu was the one that came in whenever a flan popped up, and you're like, oh, I need to hit the elemental thing, and like I need to match the color.
They're always there for the flan.
Yeah. And so I really like that concept, and I like that idea, but I do think that absent of doing the kind of having a character that's dedicated to the elemental weakness matching, kind of your Pokemon character, if you will. I do find it interesting that a lot of popular RPGs have kind of taken those ideas and spread them out. So you look at something like Persona, there is no real Black Mage because everybody has their own element, and so they are kind of adhering more to that Pokemon idea of, okay, each character is maximizing on elemental weaknesses that would usually be a Final Fantasy, one Black Mage's job of
Right.
I'm going to hit the ice monster with the fire spell and stuff like that. Now you're having to play that across the field, and so it expands out to the whole party. So I don't know that a Black Mage is super necessary, but I think there are interesting ways in which we are seeing the concept of the Black Mage evolve, potentially along the lines of bringing it back to being a wizard, of being a glass cannon spellcaster, and not just someone who's there to tag weaknesses and take advantage of that stuff. So let's remember some Black Mages now, and I think we need to start with
R.I.P.
Lulu.
They're all dead.
Yeah, I think we got to start with Lulu. We've brought her up multiple times, and she's the best. I mean, what can you say? Like Lulu, the outfit I think is one of the more iconic Black Mage outfits. I love the Moogle doll. I have to wonder what the pitch was for that. That was like, well, Lulu needs to have a basic attack, and Lulu is not going to punch anybody, and I don't think we can give Lulu a gun because of the lore in this or anything. So, like, Lulu needs something that can fight, and then someone, like, brilliant in the back was like, what if she just had a stuffed animal? And that person deserves an award. I love that person. But
Or Nomura did the whole thing.
yeah,
Belts and stuffed animals and all.
I think Lulu's fantastic. Easily one of my favorite Black Mages across all games.
Yeah, she's great. She has a certain maturity that you don't see in other characters in that game. She's definitely like the kind of the straight character. Yeah, I had a friend actually who did a perfect cosplay of Lulu, like had the costume and everything. Her dad threw out her costume. I'm like, oh no. But yeah, she did it perfectly. Yeah, I like Lulu a lot. I like her getup. I think Nomura is a understated genius in his own way.
The massive belts. Yeah.
Belt.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah, because wasn't it like a thing where they just wanted to see how many belts they could render or something like that?
It's like those old videos where you have someone like putting on a t-shirt until it gets like way too thick and they just like can't move their arms or anything. It's that with belts. Yeah.
Well, he tried and he gave it his best. Good for him, I guess.
Which is funny because it's such a ridiculous concept that I didn't even realize that was just all belts for a while. I just thought like, oh, she's just like wearing like a dress, and I was like, oh no, that's all belts.
Oh no,
I am about 30 hours into this game, and I've just realized that it's only belts.
Tim, remember a Black Mage?
Remember a Black Mage. Okay, so off the top of my head, I want to talk about Paula from Earthbound. Yeah, just because I was thinking about it because it didn't really occur to me that Paula is a Black Mage because visually you look at Paula and it doesn't really play the part. But then I kind of looked at the function that Paula plays in battle was very much a Black Mage.
Mm-hmm.
And it occurred to me that isn't that just a perfect Earthbound way of expressing a Black Mage, whereas kind of the traditional lore of a Black Mage is, someone really deeply ingrained in the arcane arts. Like we said in Mysidia, we had some really vengeful Black Mages. So for a modern day RPG like Earthbound, the idea that your Black Mage isn't like an arcane art person, but is kind of like this Sunday school girl, I think it's just a really subtle but funny little like twist of the expectations. That's your Black Mage caster. And yeah, she really does adhere to that role. I mean, she does have prey, but that's more of a thing you use in desperation. Yeah, it's not really like the thing that Paula is doing. Really, Paula's main function in battle is doing those heavy damage hits. And you might think about, you might see the design and think like, oh, like this is probably like a healer or something. But actually, that's more Ness. Actually, Ness is more of like a classic dragon warrior or dragon quest.
Say, he has a very dragon quest hero archetype where he has like the healing spells and the kind of the quote unquote holy spells, the psi spells.
Yeah. Ness is an extremely Dragon Quest type of protagonist. And so I think that Paula, I just love Paula. I think that she's a great character. I just love how you get her at level 1 and then you just like immediately power her up and she just like immediately becomes this force to be reckoned with.
Yeah, I love Paula too, because I wanted to say that she really kind of boosts the Earthbound experience. One thing I've been warning people about when they want to play Earthbound is I say when we played beginning with Ness, those first couple of hours, it's pretty difficult. You really have to manage your inventory. You have to manage some pretty nasty status effects while you're crossing the valley, Peaceful Rest Valley, I think it's called. Ironically, it's a pretty rough place, but when you get through it, you get to the village of the Blue, the cult, and that's when the game to me really picks up story-wise and gameplay-wise, because you finally get Paula, you finally get someone else in the party, and she also brings a teddy bear that can be like used as a decoy. And it's just such a relief to have another person on your team that can help you with magic, with inventory management. Dear God, you have 8 spaces. Please let me be your friend. And the thing I find very interesting about Paula as a character is that she is kind of indicated to be special from the very start of the game. Like, her parents know she's not really of this world or whatever they think, and also that the cult, they kidnapped her to sacrifice her because she has these powers. And it's like, okay, yeah, we have a game where cops are kicking the shit out of kids and sacrificing children. Yeah, you know what? I think the toy was maybe ahead of his time, just saying. And yeah, so her and Ness are kind of marked as special people in this world of, pretty mundane people. And it's her magic, just not to say nothing of like her kind of her prey ability is what really makes her special. She is definitely not the black wizard, black mage archetype, but she has the power. Oh,
we have one here. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say that that I do kind of like how you see Earthbound's adherence to sort of those classic Dragon Quest tropes, where, like you said, Ness is this solo character very much in the way that a lot of Dragon Quests start with just like your hero, and that's kind of like the Dragon Quest 1 homage, and then you start, letting in other people into your party and fulfilling those roles. And it fits to me. I forget if Dragon Quest 2, if you get the mage first, but either way, it's that sort
last.
of yeah. Okay, she's last. Okay, but yeah, I like seeing that through line, that sort of that faithfulness to RPG tradition while also subverting it every step along the way.
Sure.
We did have a listener submission from Chris M in the Discord. If we're talking non-FF console RPG equivalents where you are still balancing fire and ice offensive magic, Lemina from Lunar Eternal Blue would be my pick for Black Mage. She fills a similar role in combat as Mia from Lunar the Silver Star, but I find her character more interesting. I do like the Lunar magic casters in general. I think they have a really cool vibe. I think more of the healers personally, but I really always like the way that they portrayed the magic characters in Lunar specifically, and that felt very topical with the remasters coming out pretty soon, right? That's like coming up real fast.
Yeah, absolutely. And and actually, when I was thinking about Black Mages I wanted to talk about for this episode, it was funny. At first, I plugged in Nash from Lunar, and then I plugged in Mia from Lunar, and then I kind of thought about that for a second, especially after, in context of, do you need a Black Mage in your party? And Lunar Silver Star Complete actually basically gives you 2 just standard Black Mages in your party, and I feel like I love that vibe because I don't know about any of you, but like if you've played an MMO and you just kind of group up with a lot of friends and you're not coordinated, sometimes your party roles don't perfectly align in that, like, this is the tank, this is the healer. I mean, I have had many Final Fantasy XIV dungeon runs where I just like group up with 3 people and it's like, oh, well, we have 2 tanks. And it's like, well, whatever. We're just going to go with it because the point is that this is our party. This is who we got. And we're going to make that work.
Yeah.
And in the context of Lunar, where the Magic Guild is such a, pivotal part of the story, and these characters really feel like they organically come into the story for that reason, not because, oh, they're like the piece of the party that you need. I kind of love that. I kind of love how it's just that these are two mages. They're essentially there to cast magic, and they don't quite overlap too. And I think that's another little lovely bit of symmetry, that Mia and Nash, even though they fill the same role, they do kind of complement each other by targeting different elements, which also ties into the story. And I won't say too much more in case we have some people that are looking to, play these games the first time when the remaster comes out. But just the implementation of two Black Mages, and they both feel necessary. They're both interesting to have in the party, and I like that. I like kind of this feeling that your party is just the people that you've come into contact with and gotten to know, and that's why you're adventuring, not because we need a thief now, or now's the part where we get the archer. I really like that.
Yeah, no, I love those mages. I also want to shout out in the chat and also in our own notes, Lysithea from Fire Emblem Three Houses. A really, really cool black mage that does completely break that game. I think, I think Fire Emblem's another good one to look at for mage characters, because they do have that classic archetype of somebody who has all the books and just casts from a distance, is like a powerhouse. I like that they specifically are good for taking out armored units, because there's something great about like big dude coming at you and the swords and the arrows are bouncing off him, but then you hit him with a fireball and he's like, armor doesn't do anything against that. That cooks me. That's an instant pot right there. Yeah. Dorothea, also a great mage. The blue-haired character, I forget her name all the time. Is it Marianne or something like that? Also a fantastic mage character. I think Fire Emblem's just got like too many good mages, right, Tim?
Oh yeah. Because that's essentially you. I think Fire Emblem poses the interesting question of, do you want to have the mage in the party? Because you kind of do want the mage for taking down those armored characters. I think Blazing Blade, I remember a lot of people, I think Camus is the black mage in that, or like at least a dark mage in that. And I know that that's one character that I see a lot of fans go back and forth between, like, oh, this is like amazing, you need him in your party, I can't imagine my playthrough without this guy, and other people saying like, oh, he's too slow, or too clunky, I'd rather just use other characters. I mean, there are so many good casters in Fire Emblem. I will say that probably Soren from Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn is my standout, just because of how entwined he is in the story, and kind of like in Ike's story as well. I really like how you get your little emo boy, but again, like the Final Fantasy I Black Mage, he's a little precious, and you want to love him. You want the world to be a little bit better for him, and yeah, just the way that his arc coincides with Ike's and all that. Just a fabulous character. I love Soren so much.
I want to point someone out that should really go mentioned. Eric, I don't know if you were the one who wrote this down. Oswald, Octopath Traveler 2. I think he's a really good version of the Black Mage character. If I'm not mistaken, it's been a while since I played, but he starts with being imprisoned, right, for something he didn't commit. It has to do like with this magic that blah blah blah, ancient magic. But yeah, I love the fact that first of all, he's strong. He's not like a wilting flower. He can take some damage, as I recall. And he's angry and he's mad, and he has nothing happy about him, nothing hopeful, nothing like, not just like a snarky sort of Black Mage like you get with the Final Fantasy games. He's just wants to punch a wall and go get revenge, and I love that for him.
Yeah, I think it's super
rad.
Love a
buff caster, as Lance Hart says. Very true.
Yeah, I think Oswald is super rad as a character, and again, kind of tying into that Black Mage identity. I do love in concept the idea that he has all these sorts of hidden mechanics that elevate his power. I know that at the end of his arc, gosh, I forget the name of it now, but like the true magic or whatever he gets, like in his final battle. It's like that. He kind of see love. Like this escalation of his power as a Black Mage, and you kind of get these other passive abilities that you can learn that really, again, you have to do a lot of setup with him. He's not as straightforward. He's not like Hikari, who's just kind of like you throw him in the party and he's just ready to rock from turn one. You kind of have to set him up a little bit, but you get these huge payoffs. And I love that design for him, especially in a game like Octopath that does have so many systems with like charging your turns with like the brave. Gosh, I already forget the name of the mechanics, but just yeah. It's like I always think about bravely default with like brave default.
That's what I do anyway.
Yeah. So that's just the lexicon that I use. But I love how Oswald really doesn't just. I mean, he is the elemental caster, but he mechanically also is so much more. If you really decide like you just want him to be like your one main damage dealer, you can really do a lot of fun stuff with him to pump his damage up.
I think one of my favorite things that he can do is basically it's this move that attacks multiple times, like all in a rapid succession. Like he can break shields really fast. And I think that builds into that idea of the mage being this like gun emplacement, this battery, this artillery unit in the back. And I also love the idea of him being this buff dude that's throwing magic out. This is a weird connection, but I recently rewatched Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, and I think of I think of Armstrong in that show as like he's a fighter and he will get up and like actually punch somebody, but a lot of the times in fights you will see him in the back like launching stuff out and throwing it out, and I always like that archetype of like a buff dude who's in the back like launching giant spells.
It is fun when a buff guy uses magic because that's a choice, right? He could punch you, but he is determined that this is the moment that you need something a little extra. You need a little extra spice
this
for what you've done.
Dual classed and ready to go. Yeah. I think another caster that I definitely want to talk about is Rita Mordio from Tales of Vesperia. There are a lot of good Tales mages, but I think Rita is a classic, like just an absolute incredible character. I'm so froggy today. I'm so sorry, Victor. Blame the Austin allergies coming through. I always think of we talk about the genius aspect of the Black Mage, of the wizard, of somebody who is like learned and uses books as weapons and stuff like that. Rita as this like kid genius fits that party so well. Nadia, you've played Tales of Vesperia too, right?
Yeah. My favorite thing about her is the way she tortures that kid. I can't remember the kid's name. I always forget it, but I just know that she's again an example of a black mage who's not typical. Like she's very she is snarky, but like she really takes it to 10. And the thing is she can back up her words. Like she's pretty powerful. But yeah, the way she just would torment the little kid made her my favorite character. Anyone who like torments little children, I guess, is okay.
She's also like a pragmatic character, and I think that fits the party vibes super well. Like she fits the cast of that game super well. Always kind of rubs up against the idea of the fact that she is treated as not as capable because of her age and things like that, and so she ends up being kind of this underdog character that fits with the mold of the group very, very well, and the overall themes. Looking for other ones, a recent one that so I had done the demo build of Claire Obscure a while back, and I hinted earlier in this episode that I was going to talk about the way that like mages are kind of evolving, and the idea of elemental as part of Black Mage is evolving. In the demo build for Claire Obscure, there's this character named Luna who basically she has like a paint board, and whenever she casts elemental magic, it will create stains on that paint board, and then she can use those stains to fuel other magic. So like fire stains can fuel earth magic and stuff like that, and buff it up and make it more powerful. And so the idea of elemental weaknesses isn't just about hitting your enemies with the right type. It also becomes, how do you enable combos for yourself? How do you create this sort of like ramping engine that you build up during a fight that you're trying to get going? And I think that's like a really effective and interesting way of evolving the Black Mage moving forward, is looking at it as like elemental is not just type matching. It can also be a system for the player to buy into and play around with and kind of build their own magic engine, magic battery out of. Do y'all have any like thoughts about kind of weird or interesting new ideas of Black Mage stuff?
So I would say, because this is something that was on my mind as well, is that because I've always, in sort of the early 90s sense of RPGs, I always associate Black Mages with, kind of like the resource management, like I was saying, with like the FF1 tiered
Yeah.
magic system, that it's always, do I use this powerful spell now? Do I save it for the boss? That's very much caked into the Black Mage identity. And I've generally found that as far as mainstream RPGs are concerned, that the idea of resource management is something that's it's not necessarily that it's not important. Like, obviously, if you play a Persona or anything like that, resource management is still very much like an important mechanic. But a lot of games, like, you can save anywhere, or there's like frequent heals, or you have others or something. It kind of downplays that resource management idea, and so I actually really like how Black Mages are presented in Final Fantasy XIV, because it sort of takes that same idea of resource management with your magic bar, that you have to constantly drain it, for your damage, but then refill it with ice magic. Again, like Eric was saying, with the idea of buying into the concept of elements, the idea that, okay, your elements aren't just for hitting different weaknesses, they have different functions. One is your damage over time, one is your fire. So you have a reason to alternate between all of your elements, and not just because, oh, you're fighting a Flan right now and that's got the fire weakness. But I still really like how that idea of resource management is still preserved. It's just that it's handled just by the rotation, not over the course of a 45-minute dungeon. I like seeing sort of that faithfulness to the original concepts while still adapting it to the genre as it evolves, or in the case of 14, as an MMO that has very different rules and focuses compared to just a single-player console RPG.
As for myself, I want to kind of piggyback on something Criminal Justice said here in the chat. My new favorite mages are probably some of the mage options from modern FromSoft. They are artillery-like options. Some real Black Mage, Pyromancer, and Dark Souls, and Elden Ring has some tons of big old heavy spells. Yeah, I'm not a mage player / builder, but I am very intrigued by the kind of culture of magic that is behind the magic in especially Elden Ring, but in FromSoft in general, it's its own thing. It's not really linked to anything else that I can think of. Yeah, I just like it when you have magic baked into a culture somehow. Like, one of my favorite things about Final Fantasy VI is that magic is not prevalent. Magic is something that is unusual, and that's what makes Terra stand out. So, yeah, I like it when Black mages are kind of wound up in these like mysterious schools and like Winterhold in Skyrim. So even though I don't play Black mages very often, I do like their societies that they have built up around them, because I like societies where magic is, part of the laws, part of the system, and you're some dumb nerd who has to prove that you can use it before you go out there and start killing goblins or whatever.
I do think I was going to say, before we move on, we do need to name some more Black Mages. I wanted to run down the list real quick and we could all thoughtfully reflect on the Black Mages. I do want to shout out Yennefer from The Witcher, a great Black Mage. Fantastic. We do love Hugo from Ys Origin. That's a good one. Was that you, Nadia, or was that Tim? Tim, you put
that was me. That was me.
That's a good cut.
I knew it was important to my brand, and I had to work an Ys reference into this at some point. And Ys Origin is just, I find, is an especially beloved entry. I think it just hit the West at like just the right time, just when Steam was really starting to pick up, and that was just one of those like early RPGs on there. And I love Hugo. He visually is just a perfect Black Mage. Except because it's an East game that, runs at like full speed and never stops. He's just like a super fast pew 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 guy, and and then I don't know. He's a great character. If you haven't played Ys Origin, play Ys Origin.
I'm playing through Ultimate Felghana, so I gotta finish that. It's a great game.
Oh yeah, to be fair, Felghana is like the one to start with.
Yeah.
Have we mentioned Vivi at all? Have we talked about Vivi?
Oh my god, for Vivi.
We have not talked about Vivi. Vivi's the best. We love Vivi.
We love Vivi in this house.
What is there to say? Like, Vivi is simply like I think you say Black Mage and Vivi comes to mind.
Yeah, definitely
an archetype. Yeah, so prevalent that even like other games that will do kind of spellcasters of a smaller stature will kind of just go for the Vivi look because it's so. I think of like Vagar from League of Legends and like that's Vivi. Like you just made Vivi. Just a classic character based off of a classic design. We also have to remember Len from Chained Echoes. That was one that I wanted to shout out. Just a really interesting character trying to mix the idea of a dragoon with a black mage. I thought that was like a really cool concept.
Yeah, I like that mix.
Bothraz was also brought up from Chained Echoes. I think we covered Bothraz in the Summoner episode, but I would also maybe count them as a black mage as well. Tharja from Fire Emblem Awakening. Of course. Yeah. Tharja.
Kitty magic.
Who else? Oh, Donald Duck. Have we not talked about Donald Duck?
The canonically most powerful character in the Square Enix universe because he can cast Zeta Flare, which I think when Primal Bahamut nuked Eorzea, he only used like Tetra Flare, so he used stronger magic than Primal Bahamut. Technically.
So I kind of fell down a rabbit hole with Donald Duck because I really, that's a great way to just start a sentence and it's going to get better from there, I promise.
Alice from Alice in Wonderland posting about her Kingdom Hearts adventure. So I kind of fell down a rabbit hole with Donald Duck.
Oh yeah. So first of all, because this is where my mind went. So first of all, my thought was, is Donald Duck a black mage or is he like Tella? Is he a sage? You know, is that what Donald Duck is? And I don't know. And then that brought me to perhaps an even deeper, greater question. How old is Donald Duck? Because I always imagine Donald Duck, like, you can't have that much agita and be, like, younger than 40. Like, I've always imagined him to be, like, an old man. But, like, I looked it up, and I've seen people say, like, he's 23 or 27. Jesus. Because for me, Donald Duck, he fits as more of a Tella old man to me. But maybe he's not. And I want to hear everyone shout out, you know, how old is Donald Duck? Is he
I'm literally posting that to Blue Sky right now. I'm stealing that for content.
I think you're right.
Oh my god, I cannot wait to hear people sound off on that.
Donald Duck, I can definitely buy the fact that he's a sage, because just for reference here, now sages are not extremely common that I can think of in Final Fantasy games. Tella is one. Porum, I think, has the opportunity to become one in the after years. Sages are the class in Dragon Quest, though, like especially Dragon Quest III. That is your goal, to become a sage and use healing magic as well as the most powerful casting magic in the game. So, yeah, as I said, he casts Zeta Flare, and I'm thinking you can't be a regular like dipshit wizard to cast Zeta Flare because, I mean, can a black mage cast meteor like Tella could eventually in Final Fantasy 4? I know Golbez could. Is in his blood. He's an Lunarian.
I genuinely can't remember. Does Rydia eventually learn meteor in 4, or does that just skirt right by her?
I don't know, but I am going to mention Golbez.
Yeah.
Who is really hot as hell in the after years and is a really good black mage. He has actually an interesting story because he's, of course, Cecil's brother. Spoiler alert, oh my god. Cecil becomes a paladin and starts wielding white magic, whereas Golbez just uses like really powerful black magic. And there's a scene in Final Fantasy IV for the DS where Golbez's father is trying to teach him how to use white magic, and he can't do it. In fact, he dies, and and Golbez is trying to cast Cure to revive his father, and it's not working. So he was just like, you know what, screw this Cure crap. I'm just going full on whatever the hell I am, like, you know, level 50 black wizard. But apparently apparently Rydia learns meter at level 65. Jesus, to grind a level 65 in Final Fantasy IV, you got to be dead or dying. So I'm going to say that I qualify Donald Duck as a sage. He is ageless to me. He was the same character when I was a kid as he is now, that's pissed off and punching shit. And if he's keeping that up for this long, he's got to be just like beyond the realm of mortal ages. It's not his concern anymore.
Wait, so is Goofy then also like essentially immortal, or do we think that there's a rotating
Goofy
stable of
the
Goofies
same,
that Donald Duck is working
race
with?
as Gandalf, whatever they're called. He's like one of those angel people.
Oh, okay. Goofy descended from the heavens.
Goofy descended from the west, the lands from the west.
Regardless of what property we're talking about, I always consider Goofy like a single dad. So that mandates that he can't be like a young guy, right? It's like he has
Goofy
to be
is
like
the most divorced dad you've ever seen.
Even when I play Kingdom Hearts in my head, I'm like, Max is doing something in this universe.
Alimony Rush.
It's like that got settled off screen, and I'm just accepting that's happened in this universe.
It's like every it's every pod of dudes past like 30s. You have one who's like the ageless wife guy. That's Mickey. You have one who's the most divorced dad, and then one who's like still like he's got a girlfriend, but he kind of walks around without pants on all the time and stuff like that, and that's Donald Duck. Like he hasn't really like grown up yet.
He's getting there.
Every pod of dudes. We're talking about Black Mages, right?
It's a good Black Mage podcast. Also an in-depth Disney retrospective.
Let's remember some Black Mages and also some dudes.
Dudes.
Do we have any final thoughts on Black Mages as an archetype? I know we kind of talked about, do we think they're necessary? We talked a little bit about like what we see the future of the archetype being, but is this just like a piece of RPG canon? This is something that is like built into the foundation of when you sit down and you make an RPG and you say, I need 8 characters in this RPG. Someone's always going to be a Black Mage.
I think so. Yeah, I feel like it's an archetype right now. If you look at like when some show or whatever, a game does a parody of an RPG party, you always have some kind of Black Mage in there, or equivalent. They're just around, whether you're able to select them or not, whether they're forced into your party or not. There's always going to be a Black Mage or like a Black Mage stand-in.
100% agree with Nadia on that one. I think you can play many a modern RPG, a Persona or anything else, where the concept of a Black Mage can be kind of cut up between different party members, or even something like Final Fantasy VII Remake or Rebirth. Aerith, who is very much white mage coded, is still can be used very effectively as a Black Mage. But again, like Nadia said, it's if you want to have a classic RPG party, if you want to communicate to the audience that this is a traditional RPG party, you do got to have a Black Mage in there.
Mm-hmm. It's a classic for a reason. We've named many classic characters that fill that archetype, and that is our class conscious episode about Black Mages. Did we forget anybody? Did we not mention someone? Tell us. Let us know. Head to the Discord. Shout at us in the mailbag channel. But for now, we're going to move on to a series of random encounters. Baldur's Gate 3 Patch 8 arrives on April 15th with new subclasses, crossplay, and a photo mode. Witcher spin-off developer The Molasses Flood has been fully absorbed into CD Projekt Red as the co-founder leaves the studio. Hades 2 will be a timed console exclusive for Switch 1 and 2, but no news of a 1.0 date just yet. Path of Exile 2 is rolling out updates as players call the current pace of the game a total slog. That's not good. Nintendo says tariffs weren't factored into the Switch 2's price, but it's something the company will have to address. That's also not good. Sorry, the end of Random Encounters, not good. Bill Petras, Overwatch art director and longtime Blizzard alum, has died. He worked at Blizzard for 2 long stints working on art for games like Overwatch and World of Warcraft. William Bill Roberts, voice of Vesemir in the Witcher series, has also passed away. An incredible voice actor.
Mark.
Yeah.
Flora Heals, the Aching Soul.
He's
a tiger.
incredible voice actor, left an indelible mark on a series for many of us. They will be missed. For the tavern, Tim, you're our guest. What have you been playing lately? Tell me about some stuff you've been playing.
Oh boy. Okay, so I've been saving this for a little bit because I want to really collect my thoughts on this one before I make any substantive statements. I recently started replaying Final Fantasy XIII, and hold on. You know, like I know.
Show's over. Bye,
We did
everyone.
not talk about the Ravager class. You're so right.
But no, I know that there's a lot of strong feelings about Final Fantasy XIII, and I was thinking about all of the comments I've read about like, oh, I am like dreading the day when everyone starts doing their Final Fantasy XIII wasn't that bad retrospective, and I don't want to do that, but because I have been thinking a lot about that game lately because I fairly recently played Final Fantasy VII Remake. I'm still making my way through Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and the more I play those games, which I really like, I keep on thinking like this kind of reminds me of Final Fantasy XIII in a way that is a little bit alarming to me. Like, especially when I was playing Final Fantasy VII Remake, I remember the big criticism of Final Fantasy XIII is, oh, this is a lot of hallways. You're just going in a straight line. And Remake, I kind of was thinking about it, like, a lot of this is you're going down a hallway. It's just that it's dressed up in a way that's, more appealing. You're not necessarily just going in a straight line. Things don't look like straight lines. There's puzzles, there's more interesting, routes to go for a little treasure chest, even though it's not terribly different than the little nook that you would find a treasure chest in 13. I'm thinking about, the way you upgrade weapons, feels a lot like the Crystarium to me. Even the way that it's like Remake is this mostly linear adventure, and then it funnels into Rebirth, where now it's really open, it's a big open world. It's like, wow, that reminds me of the structure of Final Fantasy 13. It's like I keep on playing Remake and Rebirth, and I keep seeing like this feels like the game that Final Fantasy 13 was trying to be in a lot of ways. I feel like a lot of these ideas were birthed in 13. It's just it was in this really rough state. It was at this moment in time when Square is moving into developing for HD consoles and really needs to be on the forefront of making, because to me, a Final Fantasy is always like, a new Final Fantasy, at least up until 13, was always like, okay, this is the benchmark of what an RPG is. This is what an RPG can do. And I feel like 13, tried to answer that question of like, this is what an RPG is in this age where games are now super expensive for developing for an HD console. A lot of these older ideas like random battles and stuff are kind of going out of fashion. This is what we imagine an RPG is going to look like now. And I feel like that's what makes Final Fantasy 13 so weird in a lot of ways. But I also feel like now that we're kind of, 10, 15 years detached from that, I feel like a lot of the ideas have kind of just been refined over that time. Like the way that, it really focused on, like solid class structures of like having dedicated tanks, dedicated damage dealers, and all that sort of stuff. That's become way more like in vogue in RPGs now. So I've just been playing through it. I've been thinking about writing a little bit about, sort of the weird legacy that 13 has left on the industry, especially for Final Fantasy. But I'm still working through my replay right now, so I'll see if by the end of my playthrough I still feel strongly about that, or I'm just kind of like, okay, this was just kind of this weird moment in time in Final Fantasy history, and, that's what it is.
The thing I can kind of forgive about Final Fantasy VII Remake over Final Fantasy 13 myself is that Final Fantasy 13, it was just really full of itself in terms of its story and characters, and I just did not like that, whereas in Final Fantasy VII, everyone's a trash bag. And as someone who adores Final Fantasy VII, I really think they did some great stuff with the character interactions, so I can kind of be like, okay, I know this is a hallway game, but it's still fun to play, and I like interacting with these characters. I like hanging out with them, whereas I have nothing against Lightning. I think she's fine. Fang is amazing. Don't get me wrong there, but Shiva motorcycle scissoring. Just they were doing some weird stuff experimentally back then,
That was
and I wasn't really into
crazy. That was the most
Yeah.
insane cutscene in that game. IMO.
it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean there are story concepts in 13 that I like. I theoretically like that Snow is very much your bog standard RPG optimistic protagonist, and then like lightning punches him in the face.
Yeah,
Like, you know,
that's
like this is
pretty
the failure of this archetype. Like there are things I like, but I do agree with that I do think that the story is the one thing in 13 that I don't really see really panning out or really holding up. There are certain ideas that I think are interesting. I do think that's the part that I just still feel was just really rough in a lot of ways. But yeah, mechanically, you know, I really do feel like that Square Enix was really making, you know, they were trying something different. And I remember at the time, when I first played 13, I was just kind of like, what the hell is this? But now that I'm looking back at it and kind of seeing the way that RPGs have progressed since then, I'm just kind of like, you know, I kind of see that they were trying to figure out what the future of this genre is looking
I'm
like.
glad that they are at least like learning and still
Yeah.
not just throwing everything out with the baby with the bathwater, because a lot of developers do that.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like it's interesting to look at it retrospectively than to have been in that point in time when, you know, I really would have liked a Final Fantasy to have still been like an old style with, you know, open towns and side quests and all that stuff. But, you know, it's an interesting piece of history, I would say.
Absolutely.
Are you going to play all of the 13 games or just the first 13?
So, gosh, I need to think about that. I never actually played past 13, and I know that a lot of people have been I like a lot of people have told me it's like, well, you do have to at least play 13 too. Like I've heard a lot of people say, you know, 13-2 is like actually good.
That has its defenders for sure, yeah.
Yeah, and then I do want to at least, you know, throw my hat into the ring and be like, you know, and have my own take on it. It's like, did this hold up, or was this just a thing that people liked at the time because 13 was really weird and 13-2 kind of, you know, returned to some of what people were looking for in a Final Fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't know, and it's yet to be seen. And you know, and the way that the game industry is, it's like trying to play old games when new things are coming out to write about is, gosh, it's rough.
Yeah.
But I know I don't need to explain that to you guys.
Yeah. It's there's always games coming out every week, but I have found myself weirdly going back to a lot of older games, or having the desire to go back to a lot of old games. Our editor Victor Hunter posted about a game called Amagami. There's going to be an intercut if I get this wrong, but it's like a Vita era dating. Well, not Vita, but like PlayStation 1, I believe. PlayStation 2. Vic, you can cut in and interject all you want here. It's a dating sim that looked really cool that was on a bunch of different platforms, and Vic was posting about it on Blue Sky, and so I was like poking around that last night like, oh, this is kind of neat, this is interesting. And as much as there are like so many new excellent games coming out right now, and this is actually so far, I think, as far as game releases go, a very good year so far. A lot of really like high level, like acclaimed games already. Split Fiction, Monster Hunter Wilds, Blueprints, which I just rolled credits on this week, over the course of like 48 hours. I might have gone down my own Donald Duck hole with that.
No, Donald Duck hole. I don't know if that was a Donald Duck. That's what I can do. It sounds like I'm screaming for help. Yeah, Xenophone, what do you need help
Cat getting text messages right now like, what's happening on the show while I'm not there? Well, they're kind of just making Donald Duck noises. But yeah, no, I still find myself wanting to go back. I was busting out my Amberneck SP that I had picked up and was just messing around on that. And I find myself like always kind of drawn to want to play something old and familiar sometimes, even when there's a lot of new stuff. Sometimes, especially when there's new stuff coming in, because I'm like, I don't want to learn a new game, new mechanics, new numbers. Like that's a lot. I want to go back to the old comfortable. What if I just ran numbers. Fire Emblem Sacred Stones again? Just played that campaign again. So I don't know. Nadia, you find yourself like ever just wanting to go back to a comfort game sometimes?
Oh, all the time. Like, I was actually, I think my comfort game that I go back to is Secret of Mana. That's on my Switch and Ready for Action. Final Fantasy 14 can be a comfort game sometimes. Like I've just been kind of grinding the fates over in Living Memory, which is very sad, but has to be done. And also running the raids just to get the gear. Great raid series. He talks about it on Charlene Dropouts. Go ahead and give that a listen from a couple weeks ago. Not doing anything like really super interesting. There's a certain game that I'm going to get to, and I'm sure you know which one it is. But otherwise, yeah, I'm just kind of working on my book, taking it easy. Where was Donald on D-Day? Jesus Christ, what's wrong with us? Sorry, that's in the chat,
who put that in the chat? Who could have
who
typed
did that? Who's Blood God Pod?
Someone had responded to my post about how old is Donald Duck, and they had said old enough that you can request his World War II service record. So I said, where was Donald on D-Day?
Storming the beaches, obviously. He was right in front, probably eating the bullets.
I'm sorry.
Doing it for his nephews.
I'm picturing the opening to Saving Private Ryan, but you just like you Who Framed Roger Rabbit, like Donald Duck in there, just like running through.
just immediately pulling up on the beach and doing that classic.
I'm adding Cat Bailey. Please don't listen to this episode.
That'll make her avoid it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That sounds like good advice.
Remember, have you back on the episode. That's what I'm bringing to the table.
What happens when I'm gone? Blueprints. Let's talk about Blueprints. I played that game this week. It is the topic du jour right now, the game du jour. And let me tell y'all, the hype is not unfounded. It's a really, really exceptionally good game. I don't know if it fits the RPG mold. I don't think we can try and play, is this an RPG? There is permanent progression in some ways, but that's about it. It's mostly a roguelike deck builder, house builder, where you have inherited this mansion from, I believe it's your uncle, Herbert Sinclair, who has passed away, and says, I bequeath you this mansion, but in order to like receive ownership of it, receive the titles and all that, you have to go in and find the 46th room in a 45-room house. Okay, cool.
Your uncle gave you the deed to Grover House.
Yes, yeah, the Grover House. Oh, there have been so many edits of the Grover House.
Oh, thank God. I gotta look this up.
Yeah, they're very good.
People are okay.
Yeah, old friend of the show, Matt Olson, and I may have been having some fun with that one recently.
Beautiful.
But it's also very House of Leaves in that every day the house kind of resets, and when you open a door, you basically get to choose what blueprints pop up in front of you. So a bedroom, a hallway, a nook, a den, and all of these will have different resources, gems, keys, and then you also have steps per day. So you will have a certain number of steps you can take before your character gets exhausted and needs to go back and rest. And all of this so far makes it sound like it's Slay the Spire, like it's, I don't know, FTL, something like that. It's also Myst. It's also Riven. It's also Outer Wilds, in that you are learning things as you go, and there are greater mysteries to be perceived in the world around you. I'm trying to be very, very vague. I think this is deep in the way The Witness wanted to be deep, you know? The Witness had one really good trick, and it was a good trick. I won't take that away from The Witness, but I think once you got that trick, it was like, cool, I have played the game, and now I have played the game. And that's the cool thing. But I think what Blueprints does is it pulls that trick multiple times and makes it feel really rewarding when you solve it, not just in a like I'm super smart, I'm a genius sense, but also in like it fills the story, it fills the world. There's a story to this game that is actually quite good that you probably won't start getting into until you have rolled credits. And I will tell you that like rolling credits is nowhere near the end in this game. It's also like Animal Well in that way. Everything. Criminal Justice in the chat says very House of Leaves. Does this game have a single room that just says forgive all over it? Yeah, no. It's House of Leaves, and the idea that number one, obviously, like the room's changing day to day and stuff like that, and the house being larger on the inside than it is on the outside type thing, but also the idea of what a house represents to people, to how a house reflects the people that live within it in a lot of ways, is a very House of Leaves thing for me. Yeah, it's a really incredible game that I think, number one, like, manages to marry two genres that I wouldn't think would work together. The sort of evolving world puzzle game of something like a Myst, with a roguelike, and with the idea of randomness. I know a lot of people have expressed worry that the random aspects might cause some problems, but honestly, I think it works in a really interesting way, because normally in a game like, say, The Witness or Outer Wilds, even Outer Wilds, I would be like, I'm going to figure out what's up with that typhoon planet. I'm going to go there. I'm going to bash my head against this thing until I figure it out. And then normally what would happen is I'd finally give up, go somewhere else, learn something, and then go back and be like, oh, I should have been exploring. I should have been just trying to take this world in and understand it better. With the randomness of Blueprints, it forces you to do that. It forces you to go to other places, to learn more information, to take it all in, rather than just try and like barrel down one problem over and over and over again. It's really, really smart in that way, in a way that I think makes it super memorable.
I'm not sure if I'd like it or not. I just kind of keep seesawing between the sounds of it. Like, 'cause I love Slay the Spire, and but Myst is not my forte.
I think if you like deck builders, but you don't like puzzle games, specifically you don't like the idea of, I'm in a room and there's like weird buttons. I'm going to use a fake example so I don't spoil any actual puzzles, but like what's the one in Resident Evil where you do the vials and you have to fill them up to certain levels and they each hold a certain amount of liquid?
Oh, yeah.
If you don't like stuff like that, I think that's about as hard as this game ever gets. I think more of the puzzles are about like intuiting and kind of seeing things and logicking them out. But I think the actual puzzles do kind of rest in that realm. And I think if you don't like that, that might brush up against you a little bit. But what I will say is that number one, it's easy to try because I think it's on Game Pass and PlayStation Plus. Yeah. It's on a lot of platforms right now. But also, I think this game gives you answers pretty frequently. There are like a couple times in the game where it just straight up told me like, hey, this thing, that's what this is. Here it is. We're going to write it out in plain text. You can read it, So like it will get you to the credits. It will make sure you see that much. Everything beyond it, that's when you're going to have to work a little bit. And that's why I think Animal Well might be a really good comparison point, because beating Animal Well was one thing. Like, that's just playing a video game. And then everything that came after was a lot of solving, deduction, reasoning, and stuff like that. I mean, Tim, you know that because you love that game. Yeah.
Yeah. And how great is it that last year we got Animal Well, and that was a subscription game that was on PlayStation Plus. I know that's how I played it, and just this really wonderful cerebral thing. I may even say it was it's definitely a top 3 of last year, was Animal Well, and now we get Blueprints here as well. And actually, I will say this. So I've only just dipped my toes into Blueprints. I've maybe played for 15 minutes. So to say that I haven't scratched the surface, I mean, I haven't even put the pencil to the pen. I mean, I'm so, unqualified to talk about it. But my first instincts, because I also tried Outer Wilds last year, and I know Outer Wilds is so beloved, and my first experience of playing that, I actually just felt really overwhelmed in the beginning, just getting your bearings in this world and having all this place to explore. And I know that's kind of the experience of it, but I did find it very overwhelming to get into. Whereas with Blueprints, what really struck me with how it opened is just the opening and kind of getting the letter and getting the introduction to the estate. It reminded me very much of like if you've ever played like an escape room board game with your friends or anything like that. Very much that vibe. So that felt very familiar. And then what I was also surprised by is that the rogue-like elements of it, I actually felt were really grounding in a very weird way. That genre has become so ubiquitous over, the past 10, 15 years that it's like, okay, I know what this is, right? I know that like collecting resources and managing resources and steps, these are all familiar to me. And then it kind of makes the actual puzzle solving, it makes that feel like it pops more because I already kind of know this piece of the puzzle. And now I'm kind of figuring out what's coming out after that. So it's definitely a game that I'm really excited to get deeper into in the coming year or coming years, maybe coming years.
It's not that long.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, but definitely excited to get into it in the coming weeks. Yeah, it's just a shame that it did come out like a few days earlier because I'd have more to talk about. But that's about the kind of what I can offer.
Yeah, it's a really fascinating game in that way, and I think that's one of the things I keep encouraging people who are trying it out. I know that there's a lot of hype around it, and as much as that will build up like the groundswell of, oh, I need to check this game out, oh, it's the new indie darling, I'm waiting for the turnaround. I'm waiting for the like, oh, this game's overrated. Like that, I can feel it coming like a freight train. Yeah, it always happens. And I've seen a few posts already of people who jump in, they do like a day, they do like 2 runs, and they're like, I don't get it. Like when does the stuff start? And to that point, I would say like this game has to build layers. This game has to build to its big stuff. And I think a big part of that is that a lot of those early runs, you should just focus on playing the deck building part of it, of understanding its systems, its resources, the things you're using, like getting to know the different rooms so that way you kind of know what you're looking for. Because that's like, I think a lot of people talk about the big end game stuff a lot with this game, of like, there's incredible secrets to find and you're going to uncover stuff and you're going to have these huge aha moments, and that's super true, and that is like a thing that will genuinely happen multiple times over. You will love it. It will make the brain feel good. But I think in the build up to it, in those first like couple hours, you need to start to understand, okay, this is a strategy game. I need to know what board like pieces I'm working with. I need to know that, okay, I've got like kind of 3 doors that I can work with right now to move forward, and I kind of need to move north and open up some doors on the east as well. So maybe I need to look for like a den. I need to look for a hallway. I don't want a bedroom because a bedroom might dead end me and cause problems for me. And there's a lot of stuff like that where you just need to get acquainted with the systems. So once you get to the point where you're trying to solve puzzles, you know how to manipulate them. You know how to like toy with that stuff. And I think that feels really, really good when it works in concert in a way that a lot of other games have never really made me feel, of like, here is this cool system that you have built, and usually you express mastery by just winning, right? You just win the run. I love Slay the Spire, but it is like, when you play that game, you are aiming to win the game, and you're just giving yourself restrictions. You are giving yourself drawbacks. You are giving yourself ways of trying to manage the resources and stuff that you are working with. You're not trying to solve a mystery. You're not trying to solve this weird esoteric puzzle that's kind of coming out of the world and trying to show you something without showing you it. You're not doing that sort of deductive stuff that you would do it in Outer Wilds. And Outer Wilds was really incredible for that, for the way it used the loop there. And here it's using the framework of roguelike, of strategy, of board game, essentially, in a lot of ways. It reminds me a lot of board games because of the way you place down those tiles and stuff to do that. And I think that's why it feels really fresh and interesting outside of just being a really interesting, captivating mystery box. So, yeah, Anthrax Bees in the chat points out colorblind support is kind of weird in the game right now. I do think that is like something that they've said that they are working on over at Doji Bomb, but that is especially concerning for one puzzle, let's say, which might need it. So hopefully that rolls out fast for those of y'all. But Blueprints is legitimately like a
blue-green colorblind, I guess, could be a problem.
Yeah, there's some other ones too. Again, I don't want to spoil, but there are some puzzles that use color specifically to like tell you things, and not having that would really throw the whole thing askew. So hopefully that gets fixed in an upcoming patch. But Blueprints, definitely one to watch. In an April full of video games, in a spring full of video games to watch.
Make
Well,
room for one more.
oh, make room for many more, possibly. We'll have more to talk about in the coming weeks because we do have several games that we are all playing that we just can't talk about right now, but look forward to that. Nadia, why don't you take us home?
Well, this kind of started in the pre-show, which is why you should be a star of Destiny and listen to the pre-show. But we were talking about computers and school, as you often do.
Mm-hmm.
And I was talking about Oregon Trail, and for some reason, I'm sure I've talked about it in the past, because I really don't understand why a Canadian classroom or there's computer lab had Oregon Trail. Usually, when you're in Canada, they're extremely good about keeping you away from American influences in case America declares, that they're going to annex you someday, and you have to kind of identify yourself as a Canadian and put your back up and your elbows up. Anyway, we had Oregon Trail, and there was only one disc, and this is like a classroom full of Apple IIs, so we were all using the same disc and kind of had to pass it around like a blunt whenever someone had to load their game.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that America has the infamous tombstone joke, where you come across a tombstone in Oregon Trail and it says, pepperoni and cheese, usually misspelled. I didn't get that because I don't think we had tombstone pizza. It might be a little too old for you, Eric. Tim, do you know what I'm talking about? Tombstone pizza.
I do remember Tombstone Pizza. I'll be honest, most as far as it relates to Oregon Trail, at my school definitely had lots of computers loaded up with Oregon Trail. Almost everyone exclusively just played the hunting minigame, and they did not care about anything else.
Yeah.
So it took me until my teenage years to realize that Oregon Trail wasn't a game where you click on animals and shoot them.
The reason I bring it up though is because there was a infamous kind of joke in American classrooms about that, but I wanted to bring it up because in my classroom there was a tombstone that had fuck Mrs. So-and-so on it, one of the teachers in the school, and when it came up one time and some kid was had the disc, it wasn't their fault, it just kind of came up and they're just started crying because they're I didn't write this. And the teacher's I know. It's okay.
Imagine being that
crazy.
Child and just getting away with that. No one will ever know that you were the one that put that in, and now that's the classroom controversy.
How old were y'all?
Oh, let's see. This would have been grade 4 at the latest.
That's a crazy
been
shot
10.
to take at your teacher at that age.
It happened a lot in my school. I realized this as I get older, and I kind of compare stories with my husband, and it's oh yeah, my school, it was here's Imran from Iran. His uncle was shot in the street. Hi! Just kind of I went to school with a lot of refugees and stuff, so I guess I don't know if any of them put, fuck Mrs. So-and-so. It could have been some random white kid, because I also fucked up random white kids too, but it was really funny.
I never played Oregon Trail when I was younger. That is also why this shocks me. It was pretty much gone by that point. We had the weird so our computer lab when we were growing up was mostly the I don't know, multicolored, they had the different colored backs of the Apple whatevers, the Macs. But we played Math Mountain, I think it was called, where you were this snowman climbing up the mountain. You looked like that guy from Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, who's
the singer.
Yeah. And you just played as him, and you tried to solve math problems to beat Yetis and stuff like that. It was very Rudolph coded, now that I think about it. Yeah. But that was really, we had that in the Incredible Machine, and that was all we had for games on our computers growing up. And then eventually when we got to middle school and high school, we had actual Windows machines, and that was when I had a flash drive with StarCraft Brood War on it. I would plug that in and play that. Or you'd have people would install the Halo demo on everybody's PCs, and so you would do little LAN parties and stuff like that. Flash games were super popular, but we never had Oregon Trail. That was the one we missed, and apparently I just missed an incredible era of mimetic creation.
The Apple II had a real boom of edutainment software. I played Number Munchers. It was a very, very
Number
popular one when I was
Munchers, yes.
younger.
Yeah, yeah.
And here's the thing about me and math. Everything about math in my grade school years was designed to stress me out, and I don't get why. Number Munchers, get the right answer, or the computer will buzz at you angrily, and you're gonna get eaten by a monster if you fuck up your math. Oh, you better hurry up! Here it comes. And then Square One comes out with Math Man, which is about a little Pac-Man clone who gets eaten by a tornado if he doesn't get the right answer for his math problem. And I'm like, I'm a terrified of math as a young child, and you're not helping. You're not helping Number Munchers. You're not helping Math Man. Why was it like this? I still don't understand to this day.
I know
Why
we
aren't
can.
girls in STEM? Because he scared the shit out of me with a weirdo in his football helmet.
I know
Who
one of
goes
the
around
things
saying Math Man.
that people say about mathematics, they'll be like, "Oh, when will I ever use this in the real world?" But that's like a situation where I'm like, "When will I ever have to solve a math problem to not get killed by a tornado?" Like, is this the application? Is this what's going to happen
like
out there? Because I want to know that going in.
Yeah.
A pivotal moment for me was seeing Math Blaster in the computer classes, and it was one of the ones that actually kind of looked like a side scroller. And because that like resembled the Super Nintendo games I was playing at the time, I was like, math is awesome. It's like I want to play this one where you shoot the alien. Like, I want to do 4 + 5 = 9 because that shoots the alien.
Yeah.
I want math with violence.
Reason to use math, because sometimes you need to shoot the alien. That's the only way you can do it.
Okay, we're ending it there before it gets worse. Before any more Oregon Trail stories come up. Tim, thank you so much for guesting on the show. One more time, let the folks at home know where they can find you.
Well, you can find me on Blue Sky. I am Timothy Monbleau on Blue Sky. And once again, you can see my words hovering around Kotaku and PC Gamer these days. But, maybe more in the future. We'll have to see.
Possibly more. Who could say? The freelance game is always going. As always,
it's always evolving.
You can follow Nadia and myself on Blue Sky as well. We're also Blood God Pod on pretty much everything. Go check out our YouTube channel where we have VODs of all this stuff. Go check out our B Sky, obviously, our podcast feeds, our Patreon, and right here on twitch.tv. If you're not following us right now, go down there and hit that. You know, what do they do that? Do they still do like the ring, the bell?
The stupid bell. Yeah, something like that.
Do the things, punch the stuff, do that thing that all the YouTube guys do where they like punch the camera and they're like, hi, I'm Eric, like subscribe to us. I don't know. Do that. Anyway.
Smash that like button, guys.
Smash it. Destroy that like button.
Just obliterate it. Cast Meteor on the like button, please.
Cast Meltdown. Take them all out.
We've been casting a meltdown on this podcast for the last 15 minutes. We will see the stars in the post show, but for Nadia, for Tim, for myself, thank you so much for watching, and we will catch you next time on Axe of the Blood God.
Take care, all.